Welcome to Mindful Management, a podcast by Sheffield Consulting, where we share the knowledge, stories, and resources you need to create a trauma-informed culture that supports wellness, growth, and resilience. I'm your host, Shenandoah Sheffield. Welcome. We're so glad that you're joining us for yet another episode, and I couldn't be any more excited. We've been very fortunate to have some amazing guests on the show. You know, our goal is just to bring, how can we make work better? How can we make it happier? How can we make it more people-centered? And on today's episode of Mindful Management, I am delighted to introduce you to Jasmin Dennis. Jasmin brings a dynamic blend of experience in health and wellness, real estate, and leadership development, as her role as founder and CEO of Jazzed Health and Wellness. With a career spanning over 2 decades, she has been instrumental in building fitness facilities, including those for former heavyweight champion Lennox Lewis, who I'm delighted we'll get to talk about, and has worked within the high-pressure environments of the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board. Jasmin's mission to transform workplaces by integrating comprehensive health and wellness programs that enhance employees' well-being and productivity. Her approach combines practical strategies with insights gained from her vast experience, making her a very sought-after expert in fostering healthier work environments. Jasmin, we're delighted to have you on today.
Fantastic to be here, Shannon. Just happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Shenandoah. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Of course you are. There's no incorrect way. And you can just call me Shen. Appreciate that. Jasmin, tell us from your journey of spearheading wellness initiatives. It's super impressive, but tell us what made you really passionate about wellness.
It probably started, and it's young, 8 years old, because I was one of those curious people, and I would walk outside and I look up to the sky and I would figure out, say, how do we get up there? But you might need a ladder and you have to be fit to get to a ladder. But when I really fully got into health and wellness, I started at the Workers' Compensation Board, as you know. You see people coming in, employees coming in, they're ailing, they'll do anything not to go to work on Monday. Literally not to go to work on Monday. So it started in my head. So I started my certification. I took Fitness and Ontario Leadership. And then what I ended up doing, I started teaching, working during the day in the government, and then running to do my 2 classes in the afternoon. Mr. Canada, who worked out with, Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the day, had a small wellness center. And then he said I would go, someone said to me, they want you to come over and teach a class over at this facility. And I went, and I remember I did their class in the prime time. And when I did the class in the prime time, I remember walking out and this man, like an Adonis, walked up to me and said, welcome to the facility. I started teaching there 2 days a week. And one day he said to me, when you finish your class next time, I want you to pop by my office. So I walked in his office and I said, he says, I see you coming in your suits. I see you go teach your class and then you head out. He says, I'm about to, and of course he had to let me know that he was Mr. Canada at the time. He said, I'm going to open a whole chain of wellness facilities across Canada. Would you be interested to partner? And, I thought of it. I said, well, this is something I have to run by my husband. I'm going to run my boss, at the government. And so I went to talk to my boss, and I said, Andy Emick, this guy asked me to go and, open a whole chain of wellness. He says, but Jasmin, you love it. I know you come to work early in the mornings, but guess what? You work and then you change in your clothes, you put on, if it's a winter, your coat over your workout, and you take off to go teach your class. So I decided to take a year leave of absence. And I said, I went back to him and I said, my only request of you is that every facility that we open, we've got to have a women's area, exclusive women's area. So he gave me a tiny little spot as large as this office and says, there you go. And long story short, he had to expand it like 3-4 times. And then that though became a part of the whole landscape. And I was there, and I decided, okay, we're building, we're going from facilities to facilities. And I said, I got to do my own. If I'm doing it this good for this guy here, I got to do my own. And I have more for say if I did on my own. So I left to go do my own, and I got a call from somebody said Lennox Lewis wanted to meet with me, and I said, I'm in wellness. He's in Boston, So anyway, I reluctantly took the meeting.
And Jasmine, did you knew who Lennox was,
I
right?
know who he was. I knew who he was. But when you're on this, and I tell you, I resisted. When you're on this trajectory of, here was with a semi-famous person building his facility, and then another famous, and then no, a really famous person wanted to build it. Where do I stand in the middle, right? I remember I took the meeting and I walked in and I said, well, I'm going to do my own. And then he said to me, well, I'll consult with you then. I'll bring it up to par, the one you have, and, then I'll go do my own. So when I walked out, he says, do you want to sweeten the pie? How can I sweeten the pie? And I said, if it's to be your admin where I pick up dry cleaning, no. So then he proceeded to say to me, I'm going to have you come to England. I want you to shadow what happens at a fight. And the rest is history. So I ended up, was involved in 3 of his wellness facilities where, we have multidisciplinary people. And then when you go up on a second floor, it's the massage therapist, the chiropractor, anything to do with health. But what happened at the time, my focus was on going into a corporation, saying to the big guy, what do you give your employees for health and wellness? Is it a watch? Is it a pen? Is it a vacation? Why not give them the gift of health? So I would have them, either they supplement them or they pay it all for them to come over to the facilities. Now, when I started Jazzy Health, I knew I was going to change that around because most people, if they gonna get a wellness center, they have responsibilities to go home. They don't want to stop halfway home when they have to pick up the kids, when they have to go make dinner for hubby. They don't want to stop. And what I would do to really sweeten the pie, to make them get that taste of wellness, I would put myself on a schedule to teach classes during the lunchtime. And that's how I would get people to taste it, feel it, love it, right? So starting Jazzy Health and Wellness, because I have that experience, I am going into corporations now, and I'm going in to make sure that you have a healthy workforce. I don't want to build an over here where I ask them to come. I want to come in there and I want to work along compassionate leaders to make sure that you have a healthy and happy. If you look at my website, it says a happy workforce is a healthy workforce.
For sure. And how do you see that leadership, Jasmine? How is it pivotal in your mind of fostering a culture of wellness in organizations that effective leadership's on board with it?
And when I created and it has to take a compassionate leader. And what a compassionate leader is to create a space where the employees can feel free to come in. And even the word wellness, I have a framework for wellness. W means you work together. E is to educate. L is to listen. L is to lead by example. N is to nurture. E is to encourage. S is, success, create successes. And S is to sustain. So I've done something, Shenandoah, which, because I know when I go to a company and I figure, what is the one thing everyone, whether they're working, whether they're at home, whether they're in the community, what is the one thing that can slip away from someone without recognizes they're in that space? And it's called burnout. So I've created a burnout pie. And if I were to say to Shenandoah, I'm going to give you a pie. Apple pie, your favorite apple pie. And if you eat that pie in one sitting, you're going to be ill. So when you see someone, I created a medium burnout pie just to have your audience, have a picture of what I'm talking about, right? A medium burnout pie. And in there have slices of chronic stress, detachment at work, lack of sleep. So I created the pie with 8 slices. The World Health Organization states that burnout is an occupational phenomenon. So my book on hidden signs, identifying emotional burnout in the workplace, is key. And the very first thing is identifying that you are in burnout. So I would say to some of my clients, Shenandoah, I'm going to take 1 slice of that pie and I'm going to take lack of sleep. And I'm going to work on you until you are getting at least 6 to 8 hours sleep per night. I'm going to work on you. When you have achieved that, We remove that slice out of the burnout pie into the wellness pie. So my goal is to create a pie where all the slices are well. So the well pie. So when I go to organization, in the lunchroom, it's going to be that burnout pie.
And this is really an interesting and critical thing. Now, I know both of us are like-minded on this, but I think for some folks listening and thinking about it, especially because your background was so tied to physical health, right? Lifting more weights, getting healthy, working with Mr. Canada, working with Lennox Lewis. A lot of people, especially when they think about the health and wellness industry as whole, only think about that physical piece. And what you're really saying, which is purely in line with what I've been saying this whole time, is that's
Mhm.
only a very small part of health and wellness, right?
Oh, a very, very small part. There are many unhealthy people lifting weights, and they're hurting themselves.
I mean, how many boxing matches have you watched where a boxer's in great physical shape, but they're mentally checked out of the fight, right?
When I go into an organization, I sit down, I said, I'm not here to upset the apple cart. I'm here to create small, bite-sized pieces of changes that over time will equate to wellness. A checkup from the chest up is what I usually say to someone. And because burnout, it is most people, honestly, most people are walking out with a whole pie. And that's why I'm saying if you're walking out with the entire pie of burnout, you are going to be very sick. It's not a buzzword. It is necessary. Ways to a lot of, and so many people walk around not knowing.
So, Jasmine, we got your tagline there, a checkup from the chest up. That's Jasmine's new t-shirts. So we'll put those. But what do you think for our leaders that are listening who, listen, they've tuned into this podcast because they clearly care about making their workforce better, healthier in all of the ways. But I think for many leaders, and I say this about leaders who hold the title of leader and informal leaders in organizations as well, what's the first step, do you think? Like what would you say is the first step you recommend to leaders who want to instill wellness as more than, hey, do some yoga on your lunch hour?
Oh, and I was going to say that it's way more than doing some yoga on the lunch hour. It is way more than that. First, they have to identify. Honestly, I always say to themselves, look at themselves. A lot of the leaders themselves are in burnout. So I start with the leaders and I sit down and I say to them, okay, identify what you can see in yourself and your team and your workforce that and I'm going to tell them how it shows up to know they're on, a staff that, is always in a hurry, a staff that becomes detached, a staff that, all of a sudden they're sick all the time, sick days, and those are legitimate sick days. And yourself, how do you respond when there is crisis or trauma? I mean, burnout is traumatic. How do you know when your team and yourself is in this traumatic stage? Because if you don't start working on that piece by piece, then it's going to be chaos. You're going to have lack of productivity. You're going to have, and I'll tell you a story about a friend of mine. And I picked her up one day and she was in tears and she worked in a really high stress environment. She was in tears and I said, what's the matter with you? And she says, oh, you know, my boss wants me to take my phone to the ladies' room so I don't miss a phone call or an email. I am so stressed. I said, well, did you speak to your supervisor? Did you speak? No, because they would just fire me. And I said, because we're high stress. So this is why I say,
Yeah,
start.
it's almost like worn as a badge of honor, this idea of
Yeah,
like we're high stress, so we're somehow better than everybody else because we work in
ex-
this high stress environment.
exactly. Most companies believe that if you come in to help them, you're chastising them. When I was in the wellness center, a son and his mother came in. And the front desk said, I think you should speak to these people. And the son said, well, it's bad at home. I think he was about 65 pounds overweight. And then I said to the son, do you mind if I ask you to stay outside and, sit outside for a bit? So I got up and I closed the door and I just sat there. while she was sitting there. And she just started bawling her eyes out, just crying and crying and crying. But I gave her the space until she cried it out. For 45 minutes without saying a word, but I just sat there. And when she was finished, and I realized, because you know when you're crying, when that, you're okay now. It's not going to come. It's gone. You cried out all the tears, right? And then I said to her, I want to book an appointment to see you tomorrow. She didn't have to tell me anything. I just created a space for her to feel safe. And a long story about that is she ended up being a professional bodybuilder.
There's so many lessons. I think especially, and you said it, Jasmine, I just had this emotional intelligence, and it's like, but we can't take that for granted. One is that a lot of people in that same situation as you want to come in and rescue this person, right? And the truth is just allowing someone to name a feeling. You don't have to do anything about the feeling. You did not need to do anything about her tears. You did not need to solve any of her home problems, any of her work problems. All you need to do is create a space for her. You want to become a bodybuilder?
Oh, she didn't even want to become a bodybuilder. She didn't even think she could be in a program that she would be. It's just that the confidence after that, she created a safe space. She could be whatever she wanted to be.
That's the
I was
point,
shocked
right?
that she wanted to be a bodybuilder
Yeah.
because that was not her goal.
But you would have supported whatever she chose.
Yes, I've supported with her. And so that is why it is very important to form a very good relationship with leadership, work with leadership, set something in place. So if that person leaves, it doesn't upset the apple cart. Because if you just go in like, like a storm into a company and start making changes and doing this and turning chairs around and saying, oh, I want you to do this, that's not. I want to go in and sit down and have many conversations. I tell them right off the bat, this is not a 1 day thing or a two. Yes, we can set up a series of workshops over a 6 month, a 1 year period, set up a series of workshop where people, because initially there's going to be resistance. And the resistance is not going to stop until the feel good moment comes. You know that.
So, how do we encourage leaders in this case, because that's who we're talking to maintain their wellness so that that will empower their teams? And I have numerous conversations where I've had leaders say like, "Oh, we offer all of these services. Our employees don't take advantage of any of them. We pay for mental health services, we pay for therapy, we pay for all of these things." And I say to my leaders all the time, "Do you do those things?" And they're like, "No, I don't use them." I'm like, "Oh my gosh. Okay." So like this is a constant conversation I have. So how do we encourage leaders to prioritize their own wellness?
Excellent. This is what one of the L stands for, is lead by example. And they have to develop healthy habits within themselves. Sometimes you go into an organization, I would ask to work with the leadership team, the managers, develop compassionate leader, how to be emotionally intelligent. So you've got to work with leaders. You're going to work on their compassion, which is creating a safe space that someone can come in and someone can say, you know what, I know this is due this afternoon. I am not going to make it. I've burned the midnight oil. I'm going to be sick. I'm not, don't go last minute and tell your boss to on top of that, don't go last minute, it's going to be finished. You should be, and that's how you train the employee. You get something in front of you. If I get a piece of food at a restaurant, I'm mindful. I look to see where I'm going to start. Am I going to eat the steak first? Am I going to eat the rice first? And so this is what it happens in the workplace. How do you get leadership and management to not say, I don't want to do it, but to deal with them in a compassionate way? I have to be compassionate too. I'm going to go in and say, listen, you're in this position. I'm not the big bad wolf right here, right now. I'm really here to help. And I much prefer to work with your team first and roll it out. And along the way, I'm going to find somebody within that team to spearhead when I'm gone, because, I'm not going to stay with that company. I had a little bit of a trade show with a large pharmaceutical company last year, Black History Month. I went in there, and of course, my banner is all corporate health and wellness. And one of the top guys in HR walked by because I had a nice basket for a prize, and I put the bottle of Bailey's right on top.
Yeah, that's the best thing, right? Put the thing they want on top.
And he said, "You know what? I'll tell you something, Jasmine. If you go around the corner down the hall, we have a big, beautiful gym that no one ever uses." And I said, "Well, I'm going to tell you right now. I'm glad that you do have that, because sometimes I like to create my workshops within that space. I want to be engaged. But let me tell you something. This is not what I'm talking about. It's wellness. And when you find people well enough that they create the space enough, they might wander down there and they might say, I have 5 minutes to go on the treadmill. The conversation needs to be had. Because in the workplace, you might say, my boss don't. You know how many times I've heard someone says, my boss don't like me? The boss has something way better on their, they're stressed about their job.
So I'm wondering, I heard you say in the early part of that, Jasmine, talking about cultivating empathy and the leadership and helping them to even recognize. And I'm just wondering if that word empathy, is that the difference, do you think, between managing and leading?
I think compassion even overrides that.
Because I hear that even in your example about the home is even at the dinner table, right? Making dinner, the whole piece is that that's really about managing our lives, right? Like I have these tasks, you have those tasks, this person has those tasks, and there's no place for compassion or empathy. And that's what, in my mind, that's the difference between managing a workforce and leading a workforce is where does empathy and compassion fall into both pieces?
It comes in when you find there are companies that do it quite well, believe it or not. There are companies that do it quite well. And the funny thing is, I was at an event and someone from a finance, background was speaking, and he said, I'm going to tell you something. We get all this money, we go buy the latest running shoes, whatever, because it's a part of a budget. Some people do it just to check the box and say, yeah, we give our employees a certain amount every month, but that's not wellness. That is not wellness. That is, and the individual said to me, you know what? You're correct. Because when I get that extra cash, I'm not thinking, well, it's not helping with my burnout. So the compassionate leader has ongoing dialogue. The compassionate leader is emotionally intelligent. The compassionate leader knows when to say, okay, we've had enough here. Let's do something different. And when I go in and create a comprehensive wellness program, I put simple stuff of doing laughing yoga. Just step outside and laugh, or just stop and have, because nobody talks to each other at work other than work, 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 work. So I say stop and like have a meaningful conversation.
Yeah, it's why we have those stuffed animals. Everyone's like, "Shed, why do you have all these stuffed animals that sit behind you?" I'm like, "I use them in training," and everyone's like, "Do you train kids?" I'm like, "No, I use them with adults." Like, you'd be surprised what happens if you could just work in 3 to 5 minutes of play, to laugh, to play, to connect, to build relationships and trust, right? That you'll get so much more accomplished, and I cannot tell groups how many times where we've been in a training, maybe we have 50, 100 people in a room, and somebody will say, yeah, but it's this person or it's this policy. And so we can't do any of the stuff you're talking about. And how many times in that someone in the room's like, what do you mean? I run that department. I run that thing. We can change the way like there's just such a disconnect that we don't even know that there's people right here that could help us do the hard thing we need to do or change that hard thing we need to do, right?
Yes, I know. I tell you. And I was very, very strict because, in the facilities and wellness centers that I ran, I was a head cook and bottle washer. I was a top. But, it's not that I'm full of myself or anything like that. But there was an example of one of the instructors, and she would come in maybe 15 minutes, take a corner, and she's frantically practicing moves and moves and moves and moves and moves and moves, frantically before the class starts. And then I watch her for 6 months have two people in her class. And I took her aside and I said, you know what? Stop practicing and stop being present. Talk to the two people in the class. Because she wouldn't teach and run out. Ask them how they're doing. And that is the same thing with leadership running a team. They've got to walk in and they've got to see, even, And I will see someone wrangling like really bad posture, really, really bad posture that that person is going to be. And I would somehow weave the conversation into the person I'm speaking that day and just kind of say, you know what? Sometimes, you sit all day on these bad chairs and whatever, and your back aches and your head hurt, then you're irritable, and I would say, how do you have someone that come in and, ergonomically check, encourage them to stand a couple times a day. And so before you know it, there's a whole nother workshop that's built just on that. Because it is just as important to be able to carry your form, to be mindful. And I love your show that says mindful management. I love it because we walk through the day not being mindful. And it's the same way with work. You go to work, an employee's going to go with what they're starting, and they get stuck at the end of the day with the hardest part and they're stressed out about it. So, is having leaders redefine what wellness means.
I love that so much. Jasmine, I feel like we could have you on for another 3 hours. But before we get to our quick fire questions, just tell me, I mean, you've had such an impressive career. You've worked with just amazing companies, amazing human beings. When you look over your varied career, what's the one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
I would say to my younger self, Jasmine, you don't have to do it all.
It's such a good piece of advice, though.
Yeah, don't have to do it all.
And what's the impact, Jasmine, that you want to leave? Like, health and wellness, I think, especially in our post COVID world, is starting to take on a whole new meaning. I think people are kind of waking up to stuff that you and I have been talking about for decades, but COVID seemed to push us forward in this kind of positive way. But how do you hope that you're reshaping the way companies are implementing wellness strategies? What's the impact you want to leave in that?
Oh my God, I want to see healthy workplaces. I want to see everyone, and when I say healthy workplaces, I mean the checkup from the heart up workplaces because it can be done. If you're hearing that the World Health Organization is saying something like burnout is an occupational phenomenon, you want to see healthy workplaces. And I really don't want corporations to think anything about the big bad wolf. I love it if they have X amount of dollars to do certain amount of things. There's so many things we can use those dollars to do that would make it healthy for the individual. It's never going to interrupt.
Some of the things cost nothing. I mean, to your point, though, empathy and compassion is free. Like, that's a free service. We don't need a budget. Right. So, for even our very small companies on here, if you're a small business, if you're a nonprofit, if you're in the governmental space, like many of the health and wellness strategies are actually free, which I think is an important part, right?
Exactly. And that's why in my framework of wellness, I spell it out to the employee. When I go there, I said, this is what my wellness is. Not one part in here that it says you have to get a piece of equipment. It doesn't say you have to build a gym. It doesn't say any of that stuff.
Don't have to pay for a membership.
Don't have to pay for a membership. It's bringing me on to the mind is really, really funny. You know something is good and it starts to feel good and you want to be in that space. So it's a win-win for everyone.
I love it, Jasmine. So tell us quick fire. What's the latest book or television show you're watching that's taking up your time, caught your attention?
Well, good to great.
There it is. Jim
Okay.
Collins. Yeah, good to great with Jim Collins.
Then
The
Everyday
Everyday Hero Manifesto.
Robin Sharma. Lord,
Yes.
got these. And I started. Look at all the markups in these.
Yes.
You
Just
know,
how you know Jasmine and I are from the same mindset because all my books have things sticking out the top. You can see them over my
yes,
head.
yes, yes, yes.
You talked a lot about dinner today. So, if you could have dinner with any historical figure or contemporary leader, Jasmine, who do you choose? What's the one question you have a burning desire to ask them?
How do they turn it off?
Mm. Who would you ask, though? Who are you specifically
Well,
thinking of?
you say historical, right? For some reason, I don't know why I've been thinking about Abraham Lincoln for I don't know why. I don't know why I've been thinking about Abraham Lincoln, but then if it's somebody that's living right now, my Oprah, because I have a great story I can tell you off camera, off for this.
I love Oprah stories. I use Oprah a lot in some of my trainings. Tell us what hobby or activity fills your spirit with joy. What's the thing that time has no meaning when you're doing it?
Time has no meaning. I'm a runner by, always run, but I've gone into a meditative walk where I time has nothing, and sometimes honestly, an hour and a half has passed, and I'm looking where else can I walk, and I say my, walking meditation. I get within myself. I do my mantras. Time has none. If other people talk to me that knows me would say when she's teaching a class, she turns into somebody and she should name that person because it's not her.
You're somebody else.
Somebody else. But what I really enjoy doing is going for really, really, really long meditative walks. Like doing that.
Jasmine, tell our listeners, by the way, again, just so grateful to you, thankful for you coming. I didn't even get to one of my questions I wanted to ask, which is about a post you did about an Ariana Huffington quote where she was talking about rejection. We didn't get to it. So people have to go follow you on LinkedIn to see what you had to say about it because I thought it was just so powerful. We didn't get to it. We've ran out of time. But tell our listeners how they can learn about you, find out about you, hire you, bring you in to tell them how to be healthier. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
I'm going to first of all, you give, I have a mantra, you give before you get. And so I'm going to give your audience a free book.
Woo! My audience loves free.
Yeah, the hidden signs identifying emotional burnout in the workplace. And the way they can get that, my website, which is jazzdhealth.com, it's one word, jazzdhealth.com. If they click on that little, drop down thing and says I was this show, quote this show, they'll get a copy of that. I'm also going to email you a copy for your read as well, which is free.
We love it. And we'll put a link to the website in the show notes.
Yes, jazzdhealth.com. And then they find me on LinkedIn, of course. Jasmin Dennis, founder and CEO of Jazz D Health. And on YouTube, I got a tip when I just started this business to develop a learning platform on YouTube where it's just giving tidbits, a little bit on workplace wellness or ergonomics. So if they go on YouTube and all they have to do is type in Jazz D Health, it comes up. The link, I can send you the link to that as well when I send you your book. But they can reach me there. But I really would love your audience to take a copy of it, read through it, and just be mindful of themselves each and every day.
We love it. So we'll put a link to the website again, Jazz D Health. It's JAZZ, D is in dog, health and wellness. Jasmin Dennis is our wonderful guest today. Please go link, like, follow. She's always sharing great things on LinkedIn as well as her YouTube channels. Jasmin, it's such an honor to have you be part of our community. We're so glad to have you. And I hope that you'll consider coming on the show again in the future.
Absolutely, anytime.
We're considering doing a webinar panel of some of our guests and starting to do some live webinars, and we would love to have you.
Oh, I would. Oh, and I'm telling all your audience so you can hold me to the fire. Yes, I will be there.
You heard it here, folks. Everyone listening today, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we can do hard things one step at a time. Thanks so much, everybody. Until next time. Mindful Management, Creating a Trauma-Informed Work Environment is brought to you by Sheffalo Consulting. To learn more about Sheffalo Consulting and our trauma-informed change management and professional development solutions, please visit sheffaloconsulting.com. That's Sheffalo, CHEFALO, consulting.com. Make sure you don't miss these transformative conversations by subscribing to Mindful Management wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for listening. And remember, Change happens one step at a time.